Greetings, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's operator meeting. My name is Hannah Hickam, and I will be your host for today. Looks like plenty of folks on, so we'll go ahead and get started. We are going to amend the agenda, and we're going to have Chris Eisenberg go first with financial assurance rules implementation update. And Chris, just give me one moment to pull your presentation over, and then you can go ahead and get started.
Okay, great. Thank you, Hannah. Good morning, everyone. So just a very quick update this week. First thing is with regards to Form 3, being that it's a very complicated form and we're still working out issues, we obviously haven't released quite yet. And my hope is that it will be potentially the end of this week. We are getting very close, so I assure you that you will have a form to use soon. Some other questions that have been, or comments that have come up via email or phone calls is a couple people have asked about the Form 3B, and if you do not have any wells with financial assurance, you do not need to file a Form 3B. So that is only for operators which have a well with federal financial assurance. The other question, I think it came up last week, was regarding asset retirement plans and some guidance as to what should be included in those retirement plans. This is referenced in Rule 702D1 through 6B in the 5th section of each of those options. And it describes it as a demonstration of how the operator is planning for the retirement of its oil and gas operations based on projected life of field, age of infrastructure out of service, and inactive low producing wells and related information. There is a little bit more guidance in the statement of basis and purpose on page 60, which you can reference. But the way we see it, the plan should include at least the projected life of field, age of infrastructure, the number of out of service wells, number of inactive wells, the number of low producing wells, reasons for keeping those inactive wells, and then the timing for plugging out of service wells. So beyond that, it's up to you, the operator. We do not have a template at this point. So that's what it is. Next slide, Hannah. So the only other thing that I wanted to mention is last week I had brought up some new financial assurance plan information that we're making available on the website that goes into the Form 3. And if you go to our data section, the COGCC database, and then operator name, address, and financial assurance option, and you put in your operator number, any operator number. Next slide, Hannah. You will now see two buttons, green buttons up near the top on the right that say previous 12 months production data and Form 3 financial assurance reports. Those are now available. I'm not going to go over them again. You can look at the slides from last week. And if you have questions, let us know. It should be hopefully explained on the page itself. So that is all I have, Hannah, and I'm happy to answer questions if anybody has them.
Great, thank you, Chris. I haven't gotten any questions now. I did put one in the chat that I received at some point in my email, but we can get to that at the end. It's more of a generic question. I don't think it's directly related to this. And
Hannah, I see it there. I can try to answer it now. And okay. That was, so the question is, where would these Form 3s be located once they are submitted to the commission? They will be ultimately accessible, I believe, via the same way you would find other forms. But because this is a new form and the process is still being worked out, they may not quite be available yet. And it also, until they're approved, I'm not sure that they'll be available to that point. And if Jane is on this call or not, she might have some more information about it. There she is. So Jane, if you
was waving around. Hold on just a second. Okay, Jane, you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Chris. Yes, so the Form 3s when they have been filed, like other forms that are filed, they will not be public while they're pending. When they're approved, they will be in the operator's documents as an approved form. If the Form 3 is one of the plans that requires a hearing application, the Form 3 will be included in the exhibits for the hearing application for the financial assurance plan. But they will, otherwise they won't be public until they're approved.
Thanks, Jane. Thanks, Chris. Do you want to take this other question or do you want to move on? Okay, yes. Okay, the next question.
I'll answer at least the second one there.
Okay.
There was a comment, because it's taking longer to get the form available, will operators be given more time to file Form 3? We just last week issued a notice to operators about extending the deadline for filing for the first group. So for those operators with 50 or more wells, they will have until October 10th now. So that's pushed back from the 15th. And we still think even releasing the form here in the next handful of days, that will still give you plenty of time with the form. The second group, those are operators with more than 10 but less than 50 wells. They will have until November, or yeah, I think November 1st now. So it's been pushed back by a month.
Thank you, Chris. And do you want to take this last one? Okay.
Sure.
Question says, if you previously filed a Form 6 addition for a well, but it has since expired, can you now add that well to the out of service list for the Form 6A, or do you need to file a new 6 initial?
So there's two questions there. Yes, if you've not plugged the well, you can designate it as out of service by listing it on a Form 6A. The Form 6A will give you a plugging due date. And then when you're ready to plug the well, you will still have to file a Form 6 intent to abandon for our engineering staff to approve your plugging procedure, since your other one has expired. So those are really two different processes. So yes, you can put it on the list, and yes, you will need to file when you're ready to plug that well. You'll need to file a new Form 6 intent to abandon.
Great, thank you, Jane. All right, up next, Rule 312 subsequent well work and P&A and high priority habitats. Greg Geronimo is presenting. Greg, you should be able to unmute yourself.
I think I have. Good morning.
Great, good morning.
Thanks. Good morning, everyone. So I just have a couple of quick talking points regarding subsequent well work and plugging and abandonment in high priority habitats, and wanted to give some tips on best practices for consultation to make sure that that process goes as smoothly as possible. As most of you are aware, our oil and gas location assessment group is reviewing Form 4s that come in under Rule 312D and or Rule 312 subsequent operations, and under Rule 435, which is the Form 6 for plugging and abandonment, the notice of intent. Both of those rules are explicit that the director will review the oil and gas location where the well is located or where the work is to be done, and ensure compliance with all requirements of the commission's rules, and may add conditions of approval necessary to protect and minimize adverse impacts to public health, safety, welfare, the environment, and wildlife resources. So when when work is planned in a high priority habitat, that rule does provide for COGCC to consult with CPW and get a formal consultation with CPW. So in order to do that so that the form review process can kind of function as efficiently as possible, we would suggest that best practices for operators submitting work within high priority habitat would be to engage that consultation process as early as possible. And I know you've heard that drumbeat before. So, when you're planning additional well work subject to those rules, review the location, determine whether or not it's in high priority habitat. If it is, contact the CPW Regional Energy Liaison directly. Determine whether there's, whether the habitat is subject to timing stipulations. And if so, propose the work outside of the timing stipulations, if possible. Once you've consulted with CPW and either agreed that the work will go on outside of the timing stipulations or some other review will be conducted to determine when it's okay to proceed with that work, then put that as a best management practice on the Form 4 or 6. The Form 6 doesn't have a place for best management practices, so include it in the operator comment on the Submit tab, and just put in the agreed upon language that you've worked out with CPW. The Regional Energy Liaison will also provide like sort of an email confirmation. If you have a conversation, document in an email, here's what we agreed upon. Have CPW send back to you a confirmation. Yep, that's what we agreed upon. And then attach that concurrence to the Form 4 or Form 6. When OGLA gets that Form 6, they can pull that comment out of the Submit tab, put it on as a condition of approval. And, as long as they've seen the concurrence from CPW, that form can be processed very quickly. If the outcome of the consultation is that more discussion is needed immediately prior, then we'll also put that on as a condition of approval. That would be like a case where, there's maybe an if then, right? Like, we'll either work outside of the timing window, or we will conduct a survey to make sure that the species of concern is not present. And so then once that survey is conducted, then additional documentation would be needed. So that would be the additional COA. Once we receive that, our staff will send an email back to the operator saying, hey, this process is complete, and we're ready to go. Because the consultation has occurred first, there's really no need for COGCC to consult directly with CPW. It's all in the documentation that's submitted with the form, and so the form can be turned quicker. And then we'll simply send an email acknowledging that we received this form. It's got the best management practices on it. We've made the conditions of approval, and we're going to approve the form. And then that kind of ends the correspondence on it. If we get a form in, either of those forms in, that's within high priority habitat, and there hasn't been that pre-consultation between the operator and CPW, then COGCC will go ahead and initiate that consultation process. And so we will work with CPW and the operator on the site-specific basis. And that may be best for certain circumstances anyway, but in general, that's going to result in a slower approval process of those forms, because now we have to go do the back and forth with the operator, with CPW, and in order to get that. So again, the best practice for that subsequent well work in high priority habitat is to reach out to the energy liaison first, agree upon the best management practices that are appropriate for the habitat and species of concern, document them on the Form 4 or 6, include the concurrence that those are the appropriate CPW approved best management practices, and then COGCC will receive that and won't need to take any further consultative action on that form. We can move that part of the review through immediately. So we have shared a document internally and with CPW to develop just a brief guidance on this. It just hasn't been formatted yet, so I will try and get that posted up here very soon. And that's all I've got for today.
Great, thank you, Greg. Any questions on that, folks can just put in the chat. I'll read them aloud in just a moment. And here's the dates for our upcoming meetings. We're still doing weeklies through at least the first week in October. I'm not saying any. Oh, here's one. Sabrina says the process Greg just laid out also applies to refile APBs.
And thanks for that clarification, Sabrina. And that process also applies to remediation work subject to a Form 27, though there's some nuance to that. Obviously, if it's immediate response to a spill, that work has to take place. So again, any work you're going to do that's subject to form of director approval in that high priority habitat, best practice would be to contact CPW early on in the process.
Thanks, Greg. Sabrina also put in the chat APBs in high priority habitats. Please consult with CPW prior to submitting your Form 2s. Great. I'm not seeing any other questions. So I'll probably just move to wrap it up. If anybody needs to be added to the operator meeting list, please email me here at this email and I will put you on the list. If for some reason you decide that you don't want to be on the list anymore, at the very bottom, you can scroll down and there's an unsubscribe button that you can use at your leisure. All right, I'll go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you everybody for being here, and we'll see you next week. Have a great day.
Thanks, Hannah.
Thank you.